Hello and welcome to Censorship. Now, I have divided this lecture also into two parts, but it may happen that because of supplementary material, we may require another lecture for it. But initially, we will be having two lectures on censorship. Now, censorship is another human rights issue which is discussed worldwide, and there are objections to it, that why people do not have a proper expression, or why they cannot communicate, or why they cannot express their views, or why they cannot criticize, and so on. And there are a lot of questions related to that. So we will try to understand in the first part that what is this censorship and how it is say applied on citizens or on subjects by the state. Now, initially starting with the concept, so let us first try to understand the relevant articles in UDHR. Now, if you see Article 18, 19 and 20 in UDHR are basically the articles which are related to censorship. Now, if you see, the first article says that everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom either alone or in community with others and in public or private to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship and observance. So if you see, this is something which is related to religion. So everybody has the right to say propagate or practice any kind of religion, and this right is not only an individual right, but it's also a right in group understanding. So it's a group right as well. Now, this is something which is very clearly stated, that people have the right to practice any form of religion, right? In Article 19, if you see, everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. Now, this also very clearly states that everyone has the right to express. And Article 20, if you see, that everyone has the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and association, and no one may be compelled to belong to an association. Now, these two rights clearly says that you can form an association and you cannot be made to join an association. So if you feel like, you can always form an association, you can be a part of an association, there is absolutely no problem, but you cannot be forced to become the part of an association. So that rights also includes this in part 2, if you see. Now, these rights, irrespective of the fact that they are given in Article 18, 19 and 20, they are not absolute by nature. The government can, the state can put reasonable restrictions on this. These rights you will also find, or I will say a manifestation of these rights you will also find in the Constitution of India, and in the Fundamental Rights section only, that is part 3 of the Constitution, you will find these rights, but then they are also not absolute by nature. They are having restrictions in the name of public morality, health and stuff like that, and we need to abide by the rules and regulations of the state, of the territorial integrity and so on. So what are these, how these things create problem or become a tussle between the state and the individual, or the state and the subject, is something which we will be discussing in this part. But before that, let us try to understand what is censorship. Now, censorship is a very, very vague concept. Why it is a very, very vague concept? Because first thing is that there is no universal definition of censorship. The state tries to moderate certain kind of expressions, certain kind of behavior, certain kind of informations in their territorial sovereignty, the sovereign area which they have, the territory in which they have. They try to put certain restrictions on that. So it is definitely very, very vague by nature, because certain things which you are allowed to do or say at one place or at one time, you may not be allowed to say or express at another place or at another time. So this is one thing which makes it vague. The other thing is that there is no universality of ideas and beliefs and principles. So people at some place or state at certain places may not allow you to do a few things, but may allow you to do certain things at some other place. So there are a lot of vagueness which are associated with censorship as well. So if you see the word censorship, it precisely says that you are restricting the understanding or the movement or the expression of a person. So that is the whole idea, and individuals do not feel comfortable with this idea that their freedom is challenged, right? And especially by the state. So that is where the tussle or where the problem comes between the individual as a member of a group as well as an individual in itself, and they do not have the freedom to do certain things. Now, it is definitely understood as an affront to individuals' freedom, because directly your movement is restricted, your expression is restricted, your manifestation is restricted. So that becomes an affront to the individual's freedom. It is also the violation of right to know, think and express, because you might be aware of this thing that a lot of information may not be passed to you. It can be because of, look, try to understand first thing. The state is not always wrong. In fact, many a times when we are questioning the act of state, but the state in itself has a lot of responsibility, and especially in heterogeneous populations where people belong to different set of beliefs, principles, ideas, ethnicity, religion, and so they may have to curb certain kind of actions. So one set of group can have problems with certain things, but actually the understanding is that the state does it in the name of maintaining the law and order situation, right? But then that law and order situation, or say controlling the law and order situation, sometimes also becomes draconian, right? So there is, those are basically the places, the gray areas where the problem starts. And it is also said that it is a way of state's repression. They exploit people because they do not want any kind of criticism, or they do not want people to know certain informations. They do not want to let people express certain things. So because of that, they use censorship to stop them from expressing, or stop them from saying certain things or expressing certain things. So that is the thing, that is something between the state and the individual where the problem starts. Let us move on and try to see what are the types of censorship. Now, in your course, you have the first 4 types of censorship. The 5th and 6th are not in your course, but we will have a brief idea about that as well. So, Higgins, according to Higgins, there are 6 types of censorship. The first 4 let us talk about. The first one is called self-censorship or autonomous censorship. Now, what is self or autonomous censorship? It is a censorship which is not applied by anybody except for yourself. Like suppose you are moving or going to a party, to a formal party. So we usually do not wear informals or casuals over there, right? Because we dress up in that way that it looks appropriate for that place, right? So even if we have very expensive stuff, but they are casual wears, so we will not put it. We may not also use certain kind of language in front of our seniors, in front of our parents, in front of our teachers, because we feel like that is an inappropriate language usage, right? We may be using a lot of slangs, we may abuse a lot of people because they are friends, they are known to us, but in front of strangers we will be having a very different way of speaking. So those things, those small things are basically understood as self or autonomous censorship. It is basically we are moderating our behavior, right? Now it is very closely connected also with social censorship, because this behavior of us is also a social construct, because we have been taught since our childhood, or because of our social commitments, we also behave in such a way, because society also puts a lot of norms, and these two are not concerned with the state, right? These are basically with the individual or the vicinity or the neighborhood or the society to which he or she belongs, that he or she will put or moderate his or her behavior accordingly. So the society also says that you cannot do this or you cannot do that, and you very readily accept it. Sometimes you do not accept it as well, but usually the thing is that people will accept it. People will say that okay, these are certain social norms, or these are certain things which we need to do as per the requirement of the society, So we will do it, right? We moderate our behaviors. We walk in certain way, or we do not speak at certain places, or we may need to do certain things at certain places, right? Like any kind of religious functions, or any kind of ceremonial things. So we usually perform acts which are not natural to us, or something which we are not doing every day, but because of those places or because of the requirements we do it, right? So that is what we call as social censorship. The third and fourth one is directly related to the government or the state. The first one is legal, as per law. Now you may be aware of that law is not the same everywhere, and especially in countries like us where we do not have equal law for everybody, because we may have equal law for equals, but we do not have equal laws for everybody, right? And the law is different. For if you belong to a certain age group, you can be considered as a juvenile even if you have committed a crime, right? But at certain other age group, you are not considered as a juvenile. Similarly, if you are a female, then you have a different set of law. If you are a male, you have a different set of law. If you belong to a religion, you have certain set of laws, usually called as personal laws. And if you do not belong to certain religion, so there are other kind of laws. So those kind of censorships are also there, and people sometimes also have tussles with that why we are not why we are not getting the right to behave like them, even if they are the same but then they belong to different religion, or they are the same but they belong to different sex, or they are the same but then they belong to different age group, right? So those kind of things happen, but then law is the same. Similarly, the laws in one country may not be the same in another country. So at in one country something can be very acceptable, in another country it may not be acceptable, right? Or you can be fined, or there can be some punitive actions against you, and so on. So it's basically what we call as the law, and the law of the land, right? So you need to also accept that, right? You have to abide by the rules and regulations of the state, you have to abide by the rules and regulations of the territory. So sometimes people have problems with that as well, but these are, as I told you, it's law, but sometimes people have objections to that as well. The next one is extra legal. Now extra legal censorship or extra legal acts are usually performed in extraordinary situations, right? Now what kind of extraordinary situation? Like suppose the state is apprehensive about your behavior or about your conduct, and they have some objections, or they found certain things that is not acceptable. So what they can do, they can tap your phone, right? So phone tapping or putting your phone under surveillance is an extra legal measure which is taken by the state in order to maintain the law and order situation of the country or of the territory, and so on. And that is directly challenging your right to privacy. But then if you are under surveillance, if you are if the state has some kind of apprehensions against you, so the state can do stuff like that, and people object to that my private life has been compromised, and my phone has been tapped, and people came to know about a lot of information from my phone. Nowadays we have mobile phones, so it's not only phone tapping. The whole of your messages, the whole of the information which is there in your mobile can be traced, can be taken out, and can be used against you, right? So all these things, and these are basically certain things where the state and the individual are in front of each other, against each other, and they have problems with that. So that is what we call as legal censorship. Voluntary and subterranean censorship are usually not related to state, but they can be related to organizations, basically, where because of that you are a member of that organization, or you are a employee of an organization, or you are a student of an organization or an institution, so they can put certain censorships on you. But I will not discuss these two censorships right now, but they are also types of, so these are basically related to organizations or institutions, this is related to state, and this is something which is related to you and the society. So these are basically the types of censorship which Paul O. Higgins have expressed, or say explained, and are very important for us to also understand that these are the ways in which we moderate, or we need to moderate our behavior, right? So let's move on and go to the next slide, where Siegel has pointed out, and it's a very interesting thing when you will find that he says that all censorship is basically political censorship. Now what he means by that is that irrespective of the fact that you feel like that it is these you as a person is censoring something or moderating your behavior, or the society is moderating the behavior of yours, the state has no role to play over there. And say the last two which we talked about, rather the voluntary and the subterranean one, which where the organization or the institution is doing certain things but the state is not doing, except because the third and fourth, that is the legal and the extra legal, the state it is the state's organ, so you can call it political censorship. But the rest two or the rest four are not directly related to states, so you do not feel like that they are political censorship. But try to understand what is political by nature. Political is related to administration. Political is related to governance, providing governance, right? So we must understand the word political not from the normal language parlance which we usually use. That okay, political means something like wrong politics, or doing something wrong. Politics is precisely like governance, law and order provisions. So in order to maintain law and order, in order to maintain peaceful cohabitation, the act of an individual, the behavior of an individual, the conduct of an individual is moderated. So irrespective of the fact that you are applying it on yourself, but you are doing it for the sake of maintaining certain things, that is law and order, that is governance, that is the idea of peaceful cohabitation, right? So tolerance and so on. So given that understanding, if you understand, and that is what Siegel says, that if you see it from this perspective, every censorship is a political censorship. But people can have different opinion about it as well. But this is a way in which Siegel has pointed out. Now, why there are censorships, or why there are certain things? So, look, these are basically the legislations which has passed in the United Kingdom, right? There are certain things on which you do not have absolute rights, like obscene publication acts. You know that a lot of text, a lot of material, a lot of say literature and a lot of visual content can be obscene by nature, and the definition of obscene or obscenity may be different at different places depending upon the liberal attitude of the government or of the state. But there are certain obscene acts which are considered, and because of that you do not have the right to express them. So these two things, one thing is obscene publications and the other thing is official secret acts, right? You can see the legislations which has been passed and then has been reformulated since 1857 to 1939 and 1964 even, are basically a testimony that certain acts you cannot question, right? Like we will be talking about the RTI in the later part of this lecture. So you will see that a lot of nowadays everybody has passed these legislations, and everybody in our country also it has been passed in 2005, and a lot of countries have done it even in the 18th century. So people have the right to know, but then there are certain things which you do not have, or which we as individuals do not have the right to know. Similarly, there are certain things that we say about or we talk about freedom of expression, but then that freedom of expression is not absolute by nature. And similarly, if it is considered as an obscene act, then you will not be permitted to say express that kind of thing, right? So those things are also there, and these are two places where censorship works in a very, very strong fashion, right? Because the state also has a responsibility. Like, try to understand, the state is a father figure, and the responsibility of the father or the head of the family is to maintain the law and order of the family. So irrespective of the fact that you feel like that you can do certain things and all, but in the greater interest of the family, in the greater interest of the community, the state has to take certain stern actions, right? Let us observe. This is an observation which I would like to bring to your notice. The first observation is that everyone has the right to freedom of expression, right? This right shall include freedom to hold opinions and receive and impart information and ideas without interference by public authority and regardless of frontiers. It's more or less the article which we were discussing. But then, this article shall not prevent states from requiring the licensing of broadcasting, television or cinema enterprises. You must be knowing that usually if you ask somebody about censorship, the people who do not know about censorship much, or the common language understanding of censorship is like, okay, the movies are censored. If a lot of explicit say sexual content is there, or violence is there, so they will be censoring it, right? So that is the idea. So we understand censorship or censor as like the censor board, right? Or the movies which are rating the movies like A, U, R, this, that, blah, blah, blah. Different countries have different ways of rating it. Some will rate it as 15, 18, 12, and so on. So all these ratings, we understand censorship like that. But censorship is not only that, right? Censorship is any kind of broadcasting, television, cinema enterprises, and you need the licensing, because whether it is fit to be broadcasted, whether it is fit to be provided, like right now we are living in an internet generation, we are having all these internet access, so we can have everything. But beforehand, try to think that before the internet came, there were certain rules and regulations, because first thing is that the government can control that. Now it seems that the state may not be able to control it. The only way is to ban. But then you ban a website, a new website comes. You ban another website, again another website comes. So banning is also not working. But at that point of time, what they wanted to ensure was that whatever is shown is as per the morality, health and public order, right? And people should not feel agitated or aggrieved, or they should not take up certain aggression and so on, because it's not only about explicit content, sexually explicit content. It's also about like a speech, a hate speech, right? It's also about like expressing a point of view which may not be in favor of a lot of people, or which may be derogatory for certain people, right? So all these things can create a lot of problem in the territory, right? So because of that, the state has the right, and try to understand, irrespective of the fact whatever human rights says, the state is the sovereign body of that territory, and the state has all the right to manifest or moderate it, right? So this is also something which we need to understand. The second observation is that the exercise of these freedoms, since it carries with it duties and responsibilities, may be subject to such formalities, conditions, restrictions or penalties as are prescribed by the law and are necessary in a democratic society, in the interest of national security, territorial integrity or public safety, for the prevention of disorder or crime, for the protection of health or morals, for the protection of the reputation of rights of others, for preventing the disclosure of information received in confidence, or for maintaining the authority and impartiality of the judiciary. So you can see that they have actually told us all the reasons for which the censorship can be applied. The reasons can be national security, territorial integrity, public safety, prevention of disorder or crime, right? Protection of health or morals, protection of reputation or rights of others. Like, try to understand. My right is my right till the time it is not transgressing the rights of somebody else, right? If I am doing something but then it is taking away the rights of somebody else, then I may not be allowed to do something. So that understanding also needs. Like, I love to hear loud music, right? Fine, but then I stay in a hostel room. So I cannot play loud music, and especially after 11 o'clock, say as per the rules usually in our country, that after 11 o'clock in the night we are not allowed to play loud music, right? So irrespective of the fact that I have the right to listen to loud music, but then if I have my own house, and I stay in a place where even if I play it at whatever volt and watt, it will not create problems for my neighbors and this and that, so I can do that, right? But if I am doing something and that act is creating a problem for somebody, so I may not be given that right. So that understanding also has to be there, that my right is my right till the time it is not transgressing the rights of others, right? Okay. And preventing or disclosure of information received in confidence, because there are official secrets, right? And there are also certain secrets where if suppose I am disclosing an information against somebody who is a traitor of my nation, but then they have a big network. If they will come to know that I have disclosed that information, so my life will be at risk, right? So the state may not disclose who has told you that this is the person who was the traitor, right? So all these things are also taken into consideration, and even if you put an RTI, you may not get that information, right? So all these things are also certain things which we should be very clear about.